Welcome to episode 4 of the Fantasy Show by Aman and Evan Garber. Evan is not here today, but he will be next episode. And today we are going to talk about average draft position for fantasy football. And then we're going to talk about Premier League soccer because the Premier League season starts tomorrow and it's going to be big. It's going to be a great season. I released my predictions in the previous episode, but without further ado, let's get it started. And it's episode 4 because episode 3 was late 2021 and we haven't uploaded a fantasy show since. But without further ado, let's get it started. Let's react to the average draft position of certain players, and I'm going to base it off of PPR scoring because that's the league I play in. PPR. I don't know about you guys, but it's PPR. Jonathan Taylor, it's no surprise there, really, because, he had a breakout season. Running backs do carry the most value, but, amongst all fantasy apps, programs, whatever you use, Jonathan Taylor's almost guaranteed to go number 1. And then Christian McCaffrey, his average draft position is 3.2. So let's say the third pick, the lowest he's gone, it seems like on average is the 4th pick. And I do understand McCaffrey, he's the 2nd ranked player, but obviously his injury history, he said he feels better than ever, but quite a few players coming off injury say that. And so, we'll see how McCaffrey feels. I feel like to not take a risk, especially if you have a 2nd or 3rd pick in the draft, I'd say if you get him at 4, 5, 6, then that's fine because that's good value for your pick. I don't think so necessarily for the 2nd or 3rd pick, because that brings me to the 3rd person, Austin Eckler. He had a really good season last year, and his average draft position is only higher than McCaffrey's by 0.1. He's 3.3, McCaffrey's 3.2. That goes to show you it's either Eckler or McCaffrey, really, because I feel like some people either go running back or receiver in the first round, unless they're really prioritizing a quarterback, which I've seen in some leagues where quarterbacks get drafted in the first round. But it's usually running back or receiver. And I feel like Eckler's more reliable than McCaffrey if you're picking him at number 2 or number 3. And then Cooper Kupp, he's the number 1 ranked receiver in fantasy, no surprise there. It seems like on ESPN, he actually went with the 2nd pick on average, which is, honestly, that's surprising because obviously Austin Eckler doesn't have the name like Jonathan Taylor, McCaffrey, Kupp, Henry, but Eckler is more productive than people think. And Cooper Kupp, let's see, Allen Robinson is that legitimate wide receiver too. And we'll see with Odell Beckham Jr. what happens there if he stays with the Rams or leaves. Not saying Kupp is going to have a down year. And each week, a receiver is not going to constantly put up their projected numbers. There's going to be weeks where they explode for 30, 40 points, and then there'll be weeks where they only get 5. That's just the game, really. But Cooper Kupp at number 2, I feel like that's definitely a reach. At 4 or 5, I'd probably say that's good. So where he's properly ranked is good, but surprised that he went number 2 on ESPN. Number 5, Derrick Henry. On FFC and Sleeper, he's gone with the 3rd pick. ESPN and Fantrack, he's gone with the 5th pick. And RT Sports, he has gone with the 8th pick. Obviously, he's coming off of injury, but it's Derrick Henry. If you have the option to get him at number 5, you draft him. Unless, and McCaffrey, when he's healthy, he is the best running back in the league. He's so versatile that if he's healthy, he's better than Derrick Henry. Only slightly, just slightly. But I feel like this is the curious case of McCaffrey because he's the second-ranked running back. The lowest average position he has is number 4. So that shows you McCaffrey is dropping in the ranks in some leagues. And like I said, if you still have McCaffrey with the 4th, 5th, or 6th pick, you draft McCaffrey because that's value. And the players that I think are most likely to get drafted over McCaffrey is obviously Henry or Eckler. And I'm not talking about immediate position. I'm talking about it could be receiver over McCaffrey and things like that. But Derrick Henry, I feel like he's gonna do it. There's no AJ Brown. Tannehill actually performs worse with no AJ Brown. We'll see how the Titans do as a team. But I just feel like Derrick Henry is gonna be better. He's a monster. He's amazing. Justin Jefferson, rank at number 6. His average draft position is 6. Same with Najee Harris, average draft position 7. And 7, the highest he's drafted is actually number 4, which is honestly surprising. Dalvin Cook, 8th ranked, number 10 on ESPN. So depending if you play an 8, 10, or 12 person league, that's 2nd round for Dalvin Cook. The highest he's gone is 7. So 7, 8, 9, 10, around there seems fair for Dalvin Cook. Jamar Chase and then Joe Mixon, both Bengals players. Mixon is another player I consider an all-rounder because he can catch with the ball. He's obviously amazing at running. First round. See, like, if I was honestly choosing between Mixon and Jamar Chase, go with Jamar Chase. He was amazing last year as a rookie. He's average draft position is 9. That's fair. But then number 10, Joe Mixon, and then Devontae Adams. Adams' draft position is 11. The 11th ranked player, best player, I would go Devontae Adams over Joe Mixon. Over Stephon Diggs, no. DeAndre Swift is actually ranked quite high. We'll see what happens there. But between Mixon and Adams, I might go Devontae Adams. But if you have the last pick in a 10-person league, and you get Mixon and Adams, that's best case scenario right there. It's best case scenario. I know people get annoyed with the last pick. It's actually favorable in some ways. Because if one of the players drop outside of the first round, guess who picks up? The person with the last pick in the league. Anyways, that's it for the average draft position for football. Next Thursday, when we talk about football, we're going to be doing overrated, underrated, properly rated for their fantasy ranks. But without further ado, let's get into Premier League soccer. As I said earlier, the Premier League starts tomorrow. And even though I'm doing it in a PPR format, I'm still gonna mention each player's value, because for Premier League fantasy, it seems like a lot of people do the one where there's like a budget and then you pick your players. I mean, for your forwards, Harry Kane seems like the best bet here for your forward, because I mean, he's Harry Kane, and Mohamed Salah, at least on the Premier League website, for fantasy, he's actually counted as a midfielder. Then if you choose Mo Salah and Harry Kane, then your budget's getting a bit tighter, but Trent Alexander-Arnold, $7.5 million. That's really good value for Trent Alexander-Arnold. Then João Cancelo of Manchester City. He produced 108 points away from home last season, which is second among all players in fantasy. So Cancelo, Ruben Diaz, these are all great picks. And a bit of a sleeper here is Marcus Rashford, who's listed as a midfielder in fantasy, but he seems to be a starter as lone striker for Manchester United's home match against Brighton. And so, what am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say, if you get Kane and Salah, those are the two players we really want. And if you don't manage to get Salah, personally, Son Heung-min from Tottenham, he should have been on the Premier League 11. Like, I thought that was a given. He was tied with Mo Salah for the Golden Boot for Premier League. And he didn't take any penalties because he plays on a team with Harry Kane. I feel like he's getting disrespected there. Honestly, if you don't get Mo Salah and you have Son on your team and you have money to spare, that's completely fine. That's completely fine. Your team is still one of the best teams, I'm sure. So if you get the Tottenham dough, then that's perfect. Because Son is still underrated despite all the accolades he has. And I said Tottenham would be number 2 Premier League this year. It might be a crazy pick, but don't be surprised if Son has another breakout year. By breakout, I mean he gets the respect he deserves. He gets on that Premier League 11. They win the Premier League. Harry Kane breaks it. I honestly think, and yes, it was just one Continental Shield game. Erling Haaland has to figure it out because historically, strikers that have these big names attached to them don't necessarily perform as well as people think under Pep Guardiola. And so we'll see, because they lost Gabriel Jesus, Raheem Sterling, obviously to make way for Erling Haaland. We'll see, because honestly, Tottenham is a better team than Manchester City. Can Tottenham compete with Liverpool? Maybe, but I still think Liverpool runs away with the Premier League title. With that, thank you for tuning in to episode 4 of the Fantasy Show. Make sure to tune in Saturday for our normal podcast episode if you're interested in that. If not, then see you next Thursday for episode 5 of the Fantasy Show.